Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Sarah and I have the great pleasure of introducing our daughter, Laura, as the guest speaker today. Laura attended UC Berkeley as an undergraduate economics major and spent a year as a paralegal in Washington, D.C. She then applied to law school, and having an LSAT score, that's a requirement for law school, in the top 1% in the country, she was awarded a partial academic scholarship to Duke Law School. While at Duke, she was the president of the Prison Rights Project and participated in a year-long project, quote, Children and the Law, unquote, under the supervision of an experienced attorney. As a result, she acquired the passion for her work in, quote, Children's Court in LA, which has been her life's work for 30 years. In addition, she works as a mediator for an organization called Consortium for Children, in which she creates post-adoption visitation agreements between adopting parents and biologic relatives. She is also on a committee that specializes in issues relating to, quote, expecting and parenting youth. She is also a marathon runner and the mother of 3 wonderful adult children. Laura.
Thank you. I'm just going to take 1 second. My dry washing machine is loud and you're recording this, so just give me 1 second.
Nice work, Al.
Okay, I'm back now. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not very techy. It's my first presentation. I'm going to show you my screen. And unfortunately, I don't know how to make my presentation the whole screen, so it's going to be a little small, but at least it'll give you something to look at while I'm going through it. I'm going to give you an overview of the work that I do, well, how the Children's Court works. It's very interesting. And I'm going to then talk about a few of my cases just to give you some examples. And I'm happy to answer as many questions as you have. I have nowhere to go, and I'm more than happy to talk about what I do. I think it's very important, and I feel like we really make a difference in these kids' lives. So now I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so discussion of the California Children's Court.
Laura, we can't see your screen.
I can't. Okay, let's try that again.
Did you hit share screen on the Zoom?
I thought I did. Okay, let's try that again. Share screen. Oh, how about that? Now can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so here's my opening slide. Discussion of the California Children's Court. Now, the first thing I'm talking about is the overview of the dependency system, which is the Children's Court. Dependency is in our court, it's about the children. Okay, so the system is designed to protect children in California who may be at risk of any kind of abuse or neglect. Now, there's a code section called Welfare and Institutions Code 300, and these are the sections of it. Intentional abuse, which is any kind of physical abuse. And fortunately, we don't see that many of these cases. And when we do, it's not terrible abuse. It's not, rarely do we see a child who has, you know, broken bones or scars. Rarely. We don't see that very much.
Laura, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I think I know how to make it bigger. I apologize for the interruption. Press present at the top right corner, the top right, click present.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can see that.
You were just hovering over it. It's next to the yellow button that says share.
Oh,
click present.
My Zoom screen is too big. Let's see if I can move this over. Oh, present. Wow, there we go. Okay,
there we
awesome.
Go.
Awesome. Okay, so let me go to the next screen. Okay, what brings, I wonder how I go back to the other screen though. Sorry, trying to figure out how to go back to, there we go. Okay. It's going the wrong way. I'm so sorry. I just can't figure this out.
Okay, why don't you click the arrows? Can you click the arrow back?
Oh, maybe that's it. Oh, there we go. Okay, now I think I'm going to do it. Okay, there's my first screen. Okay, so I was going through section B, neglect of any kind. The majority of our cases fall into this category. These include any kind of neglect in the home. We see a lot of substance abuse. That includes alcohol, drugs. Nowadays, it seems to be methamphetamine. We see a lot of that. These also include domestic violence. We see a lot of domestic violence cases. It can include medical or educational neglect. It can include dirty home. But really what we see the most is homes where there is domestic violence and some kind of substance abuse. Those are the most common cases. Emotional abuse, that's the 300C. We don't see those very much. Sexual abuse, we see them. Fortunately, not that much, but we do see those. And then E, that's severe abuse or neglect of a child under the age of 3. Also, fortunately, we don't see a lot of those cases, which are always awful. Okay, what brings a case to the attention of the Children's Court? Anyone can call the child abuse hotline. It can be a mandated reporter who would be a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, anyone in the medical profession, a therapist. Those are mandated reporters, any kind of first responder, any of those people. But most often it's a relative, a neighbor. Sometimes the child themselves will call the child abuse hotline. So really anyone who is concerned about a child being at risk can call the child abuse hotline. And that's what would bring a case to the attention of the Children's Court, to the attention of the Department of Children and Family Services. And then they go out, they do an investigation, they speak with the child or children if they're old enough, they speak with the parents, they speak with the collaterals who would be the reporting party, relatives, other people living in the home, neighbors, teachers. They try to do as complete an investigation as possible before filing a petition. If they think there's enough information to file a petition, they bring it to the Children's Court. And then the attorneys, the judge gets the reports, and then the attorneys are appointed. I'm a child's attorney, so every case gets at least one child's attorney. There might be a conflict, so there might be more than one child's attorney. And then each parent will get an attorney. And then there's also an attorney for the Department of Children's Family Services. So there are several attorneys on each case. And sometimes there's more than one father. Sometimes there's multiple fathers, they each get their own attorney. Okay, so then if it ends up in our court, the first hearing is the arraignment detention hearing. So the arraignment means, and this is the same as it would happen in a criminal court, the parent is like arraigned on the allegation. So an allegation might say something like, on such and such a date, father was under the influence to the extent that they could not care for the child or something like that. Or, there were mother and father, like I just had one where the father hit the mother's car with his car. And even though the children weren't in the car, there was a restraining order between the two of them. And so the fact that there was prior domestic violence, he hit her car with his, this was serious. They were not supposed to have contact. There was a restraining order. So that's serious domestic violence, but it can be even just arguing. It can be throwing things at each other, any kind of domestic violence. Again, whatever these allegations are, I told you the sections before. Okay, and then the parent will say, and then, the judge will ask, do you understand the allegations against you? Yes, and then they'll ask questions always about if there's American Indian heritage, every case, there's special statutes for American Indian children. And they always ask about paternity because sometimes it's not clear who the father is. And there's paternity statutes. So they might be a presumed father, which is somebody who's acted as a father, is on the birth certificate, might have been married to the mother. And then there's an alleged father. That might just be someone who might be the father. Okay, so there's different laws and rules pertaining to what kind of father they are, or they might just be a biological father. Okay, so then at the first hearing, the issue is, where are the kids going to live in the beginning before we do the trial? And everybody has read the reports and everyone makes their arguments. Now, the parents often will say, you know, I want the child home, or most of the time, but sometimes the allegations are so serious, the attorney knows the judge just isn't going to do it at the first hearing. So the judge listens to everyone's arguments, and like me or whoever's representing the child, we do an independent investigation. We talk to our clients. And just because our client says, I want to go home, I don't necessarily argue that. The child's attorney doesn't necessarily argue that. It depends if it's in their best interest. So we need to look at all the reports, the surrounding circumstances. On behalf of the child, we make a determination what we think is in the best interest, but of course, ultimately it's up to the judge. They listen to everyone's arguments. They make a decision at this first hearing whether the child or children will stay with one or both parents. Sometimes one of the parents is the one with the, you know, drug problem or whatever it is. They can move out and the children can stay with one parent. If they can't stay with either parent, the next choice is a relative. Sometimes it's a grandparent, aunt, uncle, or one of the changes in the law in the last maybe 15 years, but since I've been there, great change in the law is it can be they call them non-related extended family member. So that's almost anyone, either the parent or the child knows, just almost anyone knows can be assessed for placement. If there's none of those people in a case, the child will go to foster care or a group home. Okay, next is the jurisdiction hearing. So once we have that initial hearing, about 3 to 4 weeks later, we'll have the jurisdiction hearing. Usually we try to settle a case. In other words, parent reads the report, let's say it is a drug case, there's dirty tests, whatever. They know that those things are true, so they might agree to settle the language. They might agree that certain things are true, or they might say, you know, like if it is a domestic violence or physical abuse, like I have one right now, physical abuse, and the kids say it happened, mom says, no, it doesn't, I want a trial. She's going to testify. She's going to want the kids to testify. So that would be where we have testimony. But again, often they settle, or often we just argue it. Like, you know, everyone reads the report and gives their interpretation of the facts. And then again, ultimately it's up to the judge. They're the trier of fact. They make the decision about what is and isn't true according to the facts in the law. Usually at the same hearing is the disposition. At that hearing, once the judge decides what allegations to sustain or not, the judge makes a decision, and this is a higher burden about where the kids can live, and it's pretty much for the next 6 months. So maybe it was just this very low standard to keep them away from one or both parents at that first hearing. But then a month later, maybe once they've done the full investigation, there really isn't enough evidence to keep the kids away from the parents, or they've come up with a safety plan where they can go back with one or both parents if the parents are, you know, enrolled in certain services, or maybe they're living with a grandparent, or whatever the safety plan is. So the judge will make that determination where the kids will live for the next 6 months. And the parents are almost always ordered into services because there's there are reasons the case ended up in our court. So if it is, for example, drugs, they'll be ordered to do a full drug and alcohol program with random drug testing, aftercare, a 12-step program with a sponsor and court card. They have to get signatures that have done it. The program, like I said, aftercare, almost always individual counseling, because it's not enough to just go to the program, but they want the parent to understand why these things brought the case to the court, and they want them to gain insight and to learn, how to solve the problems and make it safe for the children to come home. And if the children are not with one or both parents, there's always a visitation schedule. And that will be between, maybe 4 and 9 hours a week. And it might be unmonitored visits where the children can go with the parents to the park or whatever it is, or in the home where they're living, or they might be supervised or monitored visits where it might be the caregiver, it might be a social worker, or some other person who's approved by the Department of Children's Services will supervise the visits with the children. Okay, then after that, usually we come back 6 months later. Sometimes we'll have interim hearings if there are issues that come up in the meantime. But at the first 6-month hearing, the court will look again at the reports and see, has the parent complied with those counseling orders? Have they done the programs ordered by the court to address the issues that brought the matter to the court? And, we have times where parents do all the programs, and yet, for example, they'll continue to test dirty, or they will continue with the same behaviors. So it's not enough to just do the programs. They have to gain insight. The whole point is we all want it to be safe for the children to go home to the parents. So they need to gain insight. And usually the way the court determines that is they'll read reports from the therapist, the program leaders, whoever it is, and also the social workers do assessments. They interview the parents. What have you learned? What are you doing differently? Like if they used inappropriate discipline, for example. Okay, what have you learned in your parenting classes, your individual counseling? How will you handle situations where your child, is acting out or isn't complying with whatever? What are you going to do next time instead of hitting them with a belt or, doing something inappropriate? So, number 2 here, for children is another, it's not recent, I've just been there so long, but children under the age of 3, the parents may only get 6 months to reunify. So that means, like, we have babies, plenty of babies, believe it or not, born under the influence of drugs. And, there are plenty of parents who don't do anything in 6 months. And if they haven't done it in that short 6-month window, that child might go straight to adoption. They might terminate parental rights. And the reason they do that is, and again, I know this because I've been there so long, it used to be, they gave them so much time, the kids would get older, it's harder to find adoptive homes. And it's not good for the kids to, move around, obviously, to different foster homes or different relatives home or whatever it is. They want permanence for the kids. And that's the reason they made that change. And so, but for older kids, they'll get at least a year to work on their case plans, sometimes 18 months if they're making progress. And after that, if they still haven't done what they need to do, then the court will determine what the best permanent plan is for the children. It can be adoption, which is the most permanent plan. And for younger children, that's often a very good plan because it is the most permanent. Then the kids have a lifelong home, lifelong family, inheritance, whatever else. Legal guardianship, which is, it's like a paper, but the court will grant them legal guardianship until the child turns 18 or becomes emancipated. Although, and I'll talk a little bit about this, there's an excellent program. Again, this is in the last 10 or 15 years called They Can Be a Non-Minor Dependent, and they can stay in the system till they're 21. So that's the third one, the planned permanent living. Well, they might, some kids, unfortunately, especially if they come into the system when they're older, they don't find permanent homes for them. Those are some of the toughest cases. Some of those kids move around a lot. Those are very sad cases. But, some of those kids go on to do just fine, and they do go into these, become non-minor dependents, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And it's really a great program. Okay, I'm already at one of the last slides. The collateral issues we deal with are education. We always get education reports with all of our reports to see how the kids are doing. We make sure that they have, so in a normal family, the education rights holders are the parents, or they might be the legal guardians if they're not living with their parents. But in our cases, so they'll start out as the parents, but if the parents aren't fit to hold the rights for one reason or another, or even if they're, let's say, not available, in other words, their whereabouts unknown, or they're just not participating, then the court will appoint an education rights holder, which is usually the caregiver. Sometimes if the child's, for example, in a group home, it might be something called a guardian ad litem. They're CASAs. We have an organization, child advocates. It's special. These are volunteers and they're child advocates. And they're sometimes our educational rights holders. They also do independent investigations if we want them in our cases. And they're wonderful. We deal with mental health issues. A lot of the kids that come through the system, for obvious reasons, they are dealing with all kinds of mental health issues, including, maybe depression, Very often we see like ADHD. And so, the kids sometimes will see psychiatrists. If they're prescribed a medication, that comes through the court as well. We review those. The court decides based on the reports of the psychiatrists and the medical doctors if the medication is appropriate for the children. We deal with issues of immigration. I have a really interesting immigration case right now. But if the kids were not born here, there's a special unit. It's the special juvenile, they can get special juvenile immigration status, and they can become citizens through programs through the court. So we do that for our clients that aren't born here. Pregnant and parenting teens, that was, my dad mentioned that. We deal with kids who are pregnant, teenagers, well, both the mothers and the fathers. And, if they have a baby that is either taken from them or they just file a petition and they're being supervised, we represent them. If they just came into the system, no, we would still represent them. So even though 99% of the time I act as a child's attorney, people in my office do, we will be a parent's attorney if we have a teenage client who has a baby. So there are different issues surrounding that. Delinquency is when we have a client who does something, delinquent behavior, whatever it is, shoplifting, whatever it is. So those are crossover issues, and we write special reports for the delinquency court that gives our recommendations, our observations, information that we think is important for the delinquency court to have. And then at the bottom is what I had mentioned before, the non-minor dependents, which is an excellent program. It used to be the kids would turn 18, they were out on the streets. And you can imagine these kids they're pretty young, and they haven't, especially those kids who are just aging out from foster care. They may not have been in a loving home necessarily. It's someone who they're living with. They might be in a group home, whatever it is. So several years ago, they made this excellent change in the law where kids between the ages of 18 and 21 have the choice. And I'd say almost 99% of the kids do this because it's the smart thing to do. They can stay in the system. And what that means is all they need to be doing is meeting with their social worker once a month and either going to school, it can be high school or college, or working 20 hours a week. That's all they need to do. And if they do those things, they get, I'm not sure how much money it is. It might be $1,500, $1,800, something like that, which would go toward rent, food, whatever it is. So it helps them support themselves. They get 3 more years of having, working with, it's called the Independent Living Program. And they have like social workers, people there that will work with them on independent living skills. And it gives them 3 more years to, again, learn these independent living skills, and just an outstanding program. The kids do really well with, a lot of them do well. It's certainly better than leaving the system at 18. They can even, I believe, up till maybe 26, continue to get certain services. I got an email today. We got an email today about, I think it was some kind of California program where they were offering a stipend to current or former non-minor dependents up to the age of 27. And I had a former client contact me last week because she was having trouble getting her security deposit back. And I'd been her lawyer for years. And she wrote to me, she said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "Of course I remember you." And she said, "Can you help me with this?" I said, "I'd be happy to." And then when I got that email about former non-minor dependent foster youth being able to get these stipends, I sent it to her and she was really excited. I also represent her twin brother, so she's going to send it to her twin brother. So my last slide is examples of some of my cases. All my cases are interesting. I'm just literally talking about I just 4 random ones. One of them I talked to the client today. One of them, the first one I'll mention is one of my clients, typical case, came and it was just drugs. And her mom had a drug problem. She and her 2 brothers, I honestly don't remember what the conflict was, why I only represented her, not her brothers, but her and her brothers went to a foster home. Mom was supposed to do drug program, individual counseling, parenting, all of that. Not only did mother not do any of her programs, not only did she not visit the children once, zero, not a single visit in the first 6 months. And the court gave her another 6 months. I think the court gave her up to 18 months, zero visits, no visits whatsoever. I even had an aunt call me in this case, and she said, I want to know how the kids are. I might be able to take them. I said, that would be wonderful. Please, let's get your information. Let's get your home assessed. She never followed through. I said, okay, even if you can't take them, can you please at least visit? And if you can't visit, at least can you call? She did nothing. So these kids went from one home to another. In the next home, my client by that time was about 16. Her brothers were younger. They were adopted. She made the choice to go into a legal guardianship because she wanted to go into that non-minor dependent program. When she went into the program, she had the choice to leave and go live in a transitional housing program or get that money, like I mentioned, to live on her own. But what she chose, because she really had missed having a family and cared so much about this woman, she chose to stay in this home. And this, usually in those situations, the caregiver will say, I want you to have the money. I want to help you become independent. This particular foster mom did not do that. She said, I want the foster care money. So you can say, well, she didn't really care about this client. But you know what? That was the choice that she made. And my client is doing so well now. She has completed her second year of community college. She's going to do her third year. She turns 21 in 2 months. And she has set up some like Zoom meetings with me, another sort of advocate person she has, the social worker supervisor. And whenever she's sitting there, her foster mother is there. And I'll tell her how proud we are of her for advocating for herself. She wants to figure out exactly what's going to happen to her when her case closes. She wants to figure out her housing. After she completes her next year of community college, she wants to become a nurse. I'm just so proud of her. She came from such a difficult situation. She has a family now. She's going to go live on her own, complete college, and she wants to be a nurse. So she's really done great. The next case I'm going to mention, my client, her mother was a dependent herself. We see this a lot, this multi-generational dependency families. And so she is now 10. She came into the system before I had her. She had a case with three siblings. That case closed soon after it closed, like a month later. It came back into the system. And what the mother did was she went to her mother's home. She dropped the kids off on the doorstep. They were at the time 8, 10, and I think like 2 and 4. And she almost literally rang the doorbell and left. And what the maternal grandmother did was she called the Department of Children's Services. She didn't keep the kids. The kids went into foster care. One of them, because we so often have different parents, different fathers, the oldest one, her father took her. Her case closed, which was very hard on the second girl because they were very, very close. And unfortunately, they have not had visits. The next 3 kids went into a home where they've been this whole time. Mother, again, here did absolutely nothing. She didn't visit them. I think she visited them twice in almost 2 years. They're in a very good home. When we were getting close to going to a permanent plan, terminating parental rights, they were going to be adopted. Mom popped up again. She had another baby. She went to another state. And let me go back a second. The allegations in this case were drugs and domestic violence. The court ordered a restraining order so that these children couldn't have any contact with the domestic violence perpetrator. So while those kids were in foster care, mom leaves the state, goes back to the domestic violence perpetrator, has another baby with him. That baby wasn't initially detained because it seemed that mother was doing what she needed to do. Currently, that baby's not detained. Anyway, it seemed like, well, maybe she was going to get it together because she had custody of that other baby, but she continued to not visit. Also, she then contacts the father who hadn't been involved. He didn't visit. I mean, there's a lot more to this case. There's a grandmother popped up from Oklahoma. She wanted custody, but at this point, the kids had been in this home. And just yesterday, the court terminated parental rights. Those kids are in a home with a woman who's, I'd say, probably in her 70s, and then her daughter and her daughter's partner. So these three women will be adopting these kids, and they're thriving. They're doing really great in that home. And I'll just mention one more case, and then I'll open up to questions. I have a case. Oh, and the other thing I want to mention about that case, that mother, she's 27. Her oldest child is 12. So she had her first child at 15. And this other one I'm just going to mention, parents are now, I think 31, 10 kids. And again, it was drugs and domestic violence. And they didn't get any of those kids back, but the youngest 6 are going to be adopted, and the oldest 4, well, one of them, he's run away. And it's just, it's sad because the oldest 4 really suffered the most. They were with the parents the longest. I don't know, what time is it? Let's see if I can mention one. I have time. The last one I'll mention is another case I got, which was physical abuse. The kids are 4 and 10. Also, this is a mother who is in the system herself. She's also 27. The kids are 10 and 4. She was telling them to, I don't know, clean up, whatever it was, but it seemed like she, or according to my 10-year-old client, or both of them, she was always saying, you need to do this, or I'm going to hit you with the belt. And she would hold the belt, hold the sandal, whatever it was. And on this occasion recently, the little girl wasn't doing what she was supposed to do. And so the mom hit her on the face with the sandal, and the 10-year-old boy ran down the street to the liquor store, and he said, "Can I please use your phone to call the police?" He was crying. And he just said, "I'm tired of this. I'm fed up. I can't take it anymore." And he reported the abuse. So he's now with his dad. I mean, fortunately, the 4-year-old wasn't badly hurt, but it's still terrible what happened. So he's with his dad, and the dad might even be able to take the 4-year-old, even though it isn't his child. So anyway, those are some examples. We see all kinds of cases. I'd mentioned I had an immigration case. A girl came here from Guatemala with her dad. This was an alleged sexual abuse case. The dad got deported. The girl is here, and she wants to stay here and become a citizen, and the parents are actually agreeing to it. So that's an interesting case too, and we have an immigration lawyer involved. So anyway, we have time, so I'll open it up to questions.
Laura, to start us
Does anyone
off,
have any questions?
there was a question in the chat. What about those that did not go well?
Oh. Those cases that didn't, I wonder what exactly that
I believe,
meant.
Ron, if you want to unmute
So,
yourself,
okay,
tell
if
us.
the,
Hi, this is Carol, Ron's wife. I'm a CASA.
oh, wonderful,
Yeah, thank you. Doing it for 7 years.
awesome.
And as I know, every case does not come out well.
Right,
There are some that we get them too late. The damage is already done. So my question to you is, when you're talking about cases, you've talked about all the ones that come out positive. What about the reality check of which ones that don't come out positive? And
Right.
the system can't help at that point. I think we have now 30,000 kids in the system in LA County, if I'm correct. Am I right? Is that close?
probably, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know that those all came out well. I mean, I have two of those cases. I mean, their parents didn't visit them at all. I mean, yes, one of them is getting adopted, but it certainly hasn't been easy for her.
Yeah.
Her mom's parental rights are terminated. It's really been rough for her. The first one I talked about, I mean, her mom didn't reunify with her. I mean, I don't know. Yes, she ended up doing well, but that was a really sad case. The one where I talked about with the 10 kids I mentioned last, those oldest 4 kids are not doing well. One of them is AWOL. We don't know where he is. I don't know. For all we know, he could be living with his parents who are still using drugs and fighting. The second boy, it's very sad. He was with 3 of his siblings, and they had such serious problems that they went from foster home to foster home. Now 2 of them are going to go into a guardianship, but one of the kids, there's no plan. He keeps getting moved around. It's very sad. So hopefully they'll find a permanent home for him, but very difficult situation. So if the kids end up with no permanent home, they'll be in that 4th category of the planned permanent living situation. And then they'll become non-minor dependents if they choose. Like I said, most of them do make that choice, but that's what happens to those kids where they don't find a family for them. It is very sad. You know, and right, that one girl, you're right. She's stuck with college, but plenty of the kids don't. You're absolutely right. Plenty of them don't. You know, if they can even hold down a job for 20 hours a week with which they're pretty lenient trying to keep the kids in the system till they're 21 because they have so many hurdles to overcome. So, you know, most of the kids are able to stay in the system till they're 21, even if they're not doing great, because we want to help them as much as possible. What happens to them after? Once in a while, like I said, I do definitely have kids get back in touch with me, but that's what happens if they don't go well. They'll end up, and sometimes they're in a group home, which is really not ideal. It's not a family, staff comes in and out. Certainly not ideal. Or sometimes they go from foster home to foster home. So that's why they do their best to find permanence for the kids, but you're absolutely right. And the CASAs see the worst of the cases. I mean, we get CASAs on cases that are the most difficult cases.
That is true.
But we love the CASAs are wonderful. They're for everyone. They're just, I mean, you can talk about what you do, but they do independent investigations. They can be mentors to these kids. They're really wonderful.
The role of a CASA is to be the one constant in most of these kids' lives. The first case I had, I was with her, I still am in touch with her for 6 years, and I was the only constant in her life. And to this day, she knows I'll never change my cell phone number. She knows she can reach out. Now, do we have a good outcome on her? No, we did not. But by the grace of God, she did not get pregnant. But my CASAs, the role of a CASA, as I said, is to be a constant, supportive, positive force, to be help with education, to help with medical. Look, attorneys have, Laura, I don't know how many cases you have, but a social worker can have, what, 200? I mean, it's hundreds of cases that you guys all have. And so the CASAs get the ones that have been recommended by the attorneys most of the time.
Right.
And it's the tough ones. It's the ones that need extra attention. It's my push for any of you that have daughters or daughter-in-laws or men. We need men in the CASA system desperately. Teenage boys do not want to deal with middle-aged women. They just don't. So.
Excuse me, I need to leave. I'd like to tell you that I am happy that you're,
The same picture.
I can't remember the name. I counseled teenagers at San Fernando High School in the late 90s. And I was happy to see that you've expanded. I can't remember the name of the group, but it was immigration and all kinds of issues. And I counseled a number of teenagers, and they gave us less trouble than those teenagers who were pregnant, less trouble than the group members. And I don't know what you call that, immigration. It was immigration and pregnancy and all different kinds of things. I was happy to see that that was improved. Anyway, I missed a lot of the kids, even though it's the late 90s. I'm gonna have to leave. My neck is not good. Thank you for your uh, your speech today was wonderful, and I enjoyed hearing all the different things that you've been doing.
Very
I-
glad you enjoyed it.
I-
Thank you for
I-
sharing. Yeah, go ahead.
I congratulate you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your experience too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Laura, I had one question.
Yes.
How old is too old to report?
Could you get rid of this?
What do you mean too old to report? Oh, you mean, our
The
system
child-
is only for kids up to age 18. If they haven't, they can only stay until they're 21 if they've been in the system. Like they can even have their case sustained the day before they turn 18, but it can't be when they're over 18. Once they've turned 18, they can't come into our system.
Okay, because there was a case back then. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, Laura,
Yes.
that was a fabulous introduction.
Wait, I saw two people with questions. I saw two
Oh,
people
go
with
for it.
questions.
Go. Can you see them?
Yeah, I can see them. I see
Well-
two different people.
So you want to call on them?
Okay, sure. Oh, it looks, you're gonna speak, okay. Looks like Sandy and Fran.
Yeah,
Okay,
Laura,
and then Sylvia.
it's
Yeah.
obvious you love what you're doing. And I'm sure the individuals you deal with love you as much.
Thank you.
It's obvious you engross yourself so much with the clients that you have. How do you separate that from your real life at home?
That's a great question because prior to the pandemic, I think there were maybe two of my clients who had my home number, and they were these older kids, including one of my clients who she had a baby when she was 19, and I just wanted so badly to see her succeed. And I think she finally, after much time, is going to. And anyway, because of the pandemic, it actually benefited her. But now I don't go to the office. I might start again in October. That court might open up again. So now everyone calls me on my cell phone. So I certainly do get plenty of calls, I will say. But my kids are all grown and out of the house. So I don't really mind. You're right. I love what I do. And I am happy to take their calls. And I have honestly found, for all the people I've handed out my cell phone number to, which now everyone has it, nobody abuses it. Not one person abuses it. Sometimes if someone calls or texts and I say, can I please get back to you tomorrow, whatever it is, they always respect that. So, and just in terms of like, do I take something home? Am I really upset? I just think I've been doing it a long time. So, we just do our best and, just support the kids. And I am happy to let it, I wouldn't say it bleeds into my personal life, but I don't mind if it's not on my work hours. I don't mind at all. But thank you for the compliments. Thank you. Yes,
Laura-
you had a question, Sylvia?
Yes, Laura, when the children leave your agency, for whatever reason it is, so do you mostly never hear about these kids again, or do you often hear about them again?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, like I said, I just had this client ask me to help her get her security deposit back. I had another girl, she moved up to Sacramento, and then she had a baby, and she's contacted me several times. So most of the time, no. The ones I do hear from are those kids who stayed in the system till they were 21, and they may not have had, usually they do that because they don't have much of a family. And so I had been a very stable, whoever's talking about the CASA, yeah, it's similar to that. Like I had been a very stable presence in their life, and I'm glad they want to reach back out to me. So it's just once in a while, and it's usually those older kids. I've had experiences walking through the courthouse And I'll have someone say to me, do you remember me? You were my lawyer. And I've had so many cases. Sometimes I remember them, sometimes I don't. But in terms of them reaching out, it's usually just if, maybe they have a question, and usually if they're older. But sometimes like I'll have a case where it was a guardianship and the guardian will say, can I ask you a question? Of course, I always say yes. And if I can refer them to another agency, whatever it is I can do to help them, I always try to help them. But, I'm always happy to hear from, my clients. So.
Any other questions?
I see one more
Darlene?
question. Yeah.
Darlene,
I'm not quite clear. Are you employed by the county or are you in private practice and court appointed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I work for an organization called the Children's Law Center Los Angeles. We're a nonprofit and we're funded by the state. So we're court appointed. There's an organization that represents the parents, and then the organization that represents the social workers, those are the county council. So yeah, we're a nonprofit funded by the state, and we are court appointed. And for the parents, 98% of them or 99% of them take the court appointed lawyers who are excellent. And a few of them, once in a while, they'll hire a private attorney, but yeah.
In your caseload?
I'd say, I've been part-time since my kids were little, and I love it, even though I work more than part-time. So I'm a 60% lawyer, even like I say, I work more than that, but I'd say I have, honestly, I don't know, 100 and something cases, and of those cases, I honestly don't know. When I was full-time, I had like 250 clients. Now I have more like, I'd say 130 or something like that. But again, some of them are very low maintenance. Some of them are high maintenance, but so many of them are not. They're in pretty good homes, and the social workers are visiting or investigators visit. So they're not all high maintenance at all. High maintenance cases. Just, it's always a handful that are high maintenance cases.
we have another question from Bob.
Well, I think Darlene had another, did you have a follow-up?
I just wanted to say that it's clear that you have genes from both sides of your family, vet and pal, caring about people and doing something about it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, Beverly, you had a question?
Mother and father.
You have to unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself.
There's another one also.
An LCSW with hardcore children. That's who I work with.
Awesome.
And this is the first time I've heard about the non-minor dependency. Is that something that started in the past 20 years?
It is. That's what I mentioned. I've seen all those changes, and it's one of the best changes I've seen. Huge, huge.
It
Excellent
sounds
program.
like a wonderful program, because I wish I'd had it or known
Yes.
about it when I was working.
Yeah, it didn't exist when you were working. No, it's an excellent, huge, excellent change to the law. Yeah, it wasn't there when you were working. It's
Okay,
yeah.
I feel better because I didn't know to use it. So
yeah,
thank,
no, it didn't exist.
and
Yeah.
thank you for all that information. It was wonderful, and it brought back a lot of memories.
Well, I'm glad you did that great work. Thank you.
So Bob Bowden has a question. Does the Children's Law Center also have staff mediators?
No. For what kind of cases? I mean, we used to send our cases to mediation in the court. I'm not even sure that exists anymore. I don't think we do that anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Well, what was it relating to? Like settling?
I'm just wondering, because I know there's conciliation court for divorced parents who are having custody issues.
Yes.
And those are court appointers. And I didn't know if they would come from Children's Law Center, or if they're on staff at the court, or there's other private agencies that are vendors of the court. I just don't know how that all works.
Well, we used to have there used to be mediators at the court, but I don't think they have that program anymore. But they did for years. They had that in the court, and they were just associated with the court. But they don't. I don't think they have that anymore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? remarks, I want to share. You had the fabulous introduction and you lived up to everything that was said about you.
Thank you.
And we thank you so much.